Hey, wonderful friends. It is David Ault. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me here for the gathering. It's a new month. It's June of 2025, and I find myself always in love with a good series. I think what a series does, like a series for this month does, is it helps take a topic and then really flesh it out, kind of get granular with it, explore all the different types of applications and entry points to help both of us understand it more, help both of us actually lean in and even fall in love more passionately with it so that we become more and more expansive, more and more willing vessels for that. And what am I talking about? Vessels and instruments of the one. I was thinking that if I must apply a label to what I think that I am in terms of the method of spirituality, that I would be a non-dualist. At the end of the day, it's being an instrument in the dual, meaning being an instrument that is human and finite, and doing everything within my power to recognize that, yes, this is temporary, but what I really am is this. That takes all of the jargon, that takes all of the written word and the principles and the spoken word that we talk about in terms of oneness, and then begins to draw it in and make it personal. I understand it conceptually. How can I live it? How can I have my understanding that everything is one, that everything is perfect, that everything is a divine design? How can that go from just being special occasion topics or recitations and become actually foundational, become the cultivated deep roots of my being, even though absurdly, paradoxically, I'm finite and temporary? How can I be so assured in my knowing, not my belief? Belief is different because beliefs are conceptual, but my knowing doesn't need to prove or debate. My knowing is just, I'm navigating through life in this incarnation as David. I know it's impermanent. I know that it's going to age. I know that things are going to fall apart. I know that there's no control over what's going on in this particular human plane of existence because it's all based on dualism, right? But even in the midst of all this chaos, even in the midst of this sort of hell realm, if you will, that knowing that God is ever present is not just a catchphrase or not just something to recite when things look good, but it is the deep rootedness by which I live by and move by, have my being by, operate from, make choices from, live through. That's what I want to do. I want to do that more and more and more. And um, I find that I'm having the most incredible conversations with people who seem to be on that same track. What's interesting about being on that same track is each of us have a little bit of a shared experience, and it's exhausting all the other methods. It's as if we've kind of wrung out all of the other methods that were just pacifiers, things that just got us by in the moment to pacify the suffering, to pacify the clinging and the craving and the grasping for something in the external world. Perhaps it has to do with age, but we're all of different ages. It has to do with where we are on like a particular timeline. And so there's been a beautiful exhaustion of all the other methods. The other methods are not wrong. The other methods actually were stepping stones, or they were in and of themselves paths on an ever unfolding path of getting to places where the only thing that seems to be of value is to live and to breathe in all aspects of oneness, no matter how noisy it gets. That's my hope. That's my goal for June, is I kind of want to make a series of all the things that helped get me here. And believe me, there's no arrival, so I'm still just as much of a student of this as you are. But these examples have helped me and helped other people in my using them to get a little more clear, to have a little bit more of the fog of mystery lift so that we could see and have things become self-evident. So I'm going to call this part one of part four for this month of June of all things non-dual. So, part one, I'm going to go back to a really great metaphor that worked beautifully and continues to work beautifully. I would say that I've used now for the past maybe 7 or 8 years. And it involves a colloquialism that I know that you're familiar with. In fact, I'll speak the first part and then you could finish it. I can't see the forest for the trees. I can't see the forest for the trees. A common phrase that's been around for a long, long time. And what it means is that I can't see a solution because of the multitude of problems that are right in front of my face. And if you really kind of sit with that, and of course, that's what I'm asking you to do, we might see from an intellectual standpoint that the person who does that or the act of that, I can't see the forest for the trees, does have within it a little bit of unwillingness of that person to pause, to take a breath, and to think about the bigger scope, the bigger picture. That even though things are bad right now, that it's temporary, that there is a passage of time where the suffering and the heightened drama of that thing will calm down and that there are other solutions and other things that will come about. We often say hindsight is 2020. You know, what I know now when I look back on those moments where I was so tree obsessed, all that I could see or focus or speak about or live from or manage was the tree, the problem. That when I look back, I see it as more than just an educational tool, that it was a pivotal point in my life where I began to make other changes. Classic example that we're all aware of is many of my friends who have been on a cancer journey. Sometimes when they get on the other side of that, they will look back and they will say, it was terrible, it was horrifying, it was painful in the moment, particularly in the beginnings of the diagnosis. There's great grieving and loss and fear. And as they went upon the journey of that, it became a sort of portal or an opening of creating a whole different foundation of something far more expansive in their life. Perhaps what it did was it opened them up to levels of gratitude and communication and restructuring of values with regards to what's really important to them. Maybe it allowed them the chance to take a risk, if you will, because they felt like their mortality was at stake. So why not? And from that, a whole new realm of adventure and opportunity opened up. A classic state of being someone who can't see the forest for the trees because we're so immediately stuck there. And yet, sometimes when we can look back, when we have distance, hindsight is 2020, we see that all along, even in those moments of fear, there was a forest, there was expansion. So that statement, that colloquialism, is a perfect example of non-dualism. And it's a perfect way in order to frame what all of us are having, the same shared experience for anyone who is born into this human realm. The human realm, you might say, is dictated or governed by tree consciousness. Everything about it is based upon separatism, dualism. And in the separatism and the dualism, then what comes with that is baked in beliefs of limitation. So you better do this before somebody else does it because then there won't be enough. You better preserve this or guard this because if you don't, there are all these things out there that are going to come and take it away. You better learn from your mistakes because if you don't, you are vowed to repeat them and you can't afford not to do that again. And so you have to go forward with caution and trepidation and preservation with regards to reaping what it is that you sow because of past mistakes. And so we become because of all of that, because that's what we hear over and over again, and we don't even give it a second thought. We don't wake up in the morning and go, okay, today I'm going to be hyper concerned about my well being. But it's in there, it's baked in. It is so unconscious and so constant that it becomes the tentacle that reaches out and affects all of the yeses and the nos and the ways in which we correspond and relate with all of life. And so we are very much in this band of human existence. We're very much focused on from the level of mind about trees, managing the trees. The trees become my country, my heritage, my religion, my culture, my ancestral lineage, all of the things, right, that are so siloed with me. When there is also the tree, there is also something far more expansive that can't be seen from the lens of dualism, the non-dualism, the allness. And so, how does one, if they choose to, or even are aware of the fact that there is something beyond that tree culture or that hyper-focused management of just getting through life? How does one break free of that? One doesn't until something interrupts that or disrupts the routine of managing the tree. And so sometimes what that looks like is you pick up a book or you hear a message or you attend to something that causes you to think that perhaps the way in which you have been raised, the culture that you've been a part of, the domestication that has just been second nature and going on for generations and generations is not maybe all that there is. You know, for me, when I look back on my upbringing in fundamentalist Christianity, the disgruntlement, or what I call the divine discontent, started in my teen years. I'm like listening to this going, something about this message of being born of sin, of being inherently evil, doesn't make sense to me. I can't match that to a benevolent God and why this benevolent God is still going to judge me. Wasn't adding up. Thankfully, there was enough critical thinking skills in there to cause myself to question, but I didn't have answers to my question. I didn't have, oh, well, if I break free, there's this, because I didn't know what this was. But the discontent was strong enough, and it was coupled with physical feelings, like the feelings of being a gay person in a culture that looked at that as sinful, as immoral. And yet, here are these feelings, and as much as I might want to rationalize and suppress them, the natural tendency of all of that maturity and all of those urges to come up makes it very difficult to suppress those things. And so all of the culmination of that was building up in order for me to go, you know what? I'm going to risk stepping out of the sight line of the tree, even though everything tells me, even though my culture and my religion says you better not, to step out of that even though I don't know that there's a forest. But it isn't until I do that that I'm aware that there is something. So I go on a journey. I go on a journey where I just get far enough around to the one tree that tells me that I'm not enough, the world's not safe, that I'm immoral, that I'm born of sin. I just get around that one tree enough to where I can go, oh, wow, there's like a vista up there. That example to me is a beautiful entry point into non-dualism. So if I'm focused on the tree, and I've even had crowds of people where I've told them to put their hands in front of their face, where I've told them to put their programs in front of their face and to keep them there. And I start listing a litany of issues, everything from diagnoses to relationship problems to pain and suffering to worry and concern to anxiety to you name it, and to hold that and to say, there is a part of you that knows that there's something beyond your hand and beyond your program. You know that because you've had a little bit of an experience of it. There's something that you know physically is beyond this because you've already seen the spaciousness of the physical room that you're sitting in. And yet, right now, this thing is in front of you, blocking you. And so there's also a part of you that knows that even if you were born in tree consciousness, there's still a part of you that knows that that's not your truth, that that's not the totality of your experience, and that what you are here to do is to break free of that. And so are you willing to trust that, to lean into the divine discontent, and instead of medicating it or running away from it, suppressing it, or digging deeper, deeper, deeper grooves into stoicism and into inertia that refuses to move? Are you willing to allow yourself to step around that for the mystery of how that will unfold? That's sort of the invitation for the non-dualist. It's, are you willing to step away from the conformity and even the unconscious biases that have made up your world right now and say, I am willing to expand. I am willing to open up to look at possibilities that I never dreamed possible. And I find that if you are willing to just speak those words, that because of the beautiful lawfulness that exists, that the law, this lawfulness that takes the intentionality of those words, goes about and it brings you the effect of those words. If I say that I'm willing to see my own bias, I'm willing to see something beyond my own fear, I'm willing to step outside even from my preserved ego and identity. I'm willing to like let all of that just dissolve in order to see or taste or view or know a glimpse of something be more expansive. And if I'm just willing to do that, and then I pay attention, the opportunity presents itself without fail. You have that as my guarantee, but you have to be willing not only to say that. Another way that I've done that in my life that opened doorways was to just say, I'm available. I'm available. And if you mean it, there's the key. If you mean it, if you are sustainably sincere, then your whole life changes. Meaning, the whole way in which you view life, live life, experience life changes, no matter how noisy it is out there. And there are things then that begin to present themselves. There are people, there are circumstances, there are opportunities, there are things that in our unconsciousness we were not able to see, but now we are able to see. That is becoming and leaning into being a forest person, a person who can see, who's not dismissing the tree. That's key. I'm not dismissing the tree. I'm not dismissing or pushing aside the human urgencies or the human inequities that go on, but I'm not becoming so lost in despair that the energy and the relationship that I have with the tree is at the same level of the misguidance and the false information that I have about the tree. I have forest consciousness now. I have an awareness that is expansive. And so as I meet the tree head on with regards to the way in which I advocate, relate to it, see it, I know that it is not the end stop. I know that it is not the end all be all because my access is to forest nature, to something far more expansive. One brief example, and then I'll close for our week one, is this. When working in Guatemala, in that part of the middle of the country in Central America, there is a rich, expansive Mayan culture. And in all of the villages that make up the central part of Guatemala, there are hundreds and hundreds of dialects. There are hundreds and hundreds of villages, all speaking these specialized Mayan dialects. And it's fascinating when you look culturally at the shared experience that for the most part, um, if not all of them, live in what would be called crisis mode. The legacy of poverty and of struggle and of labor is such that here are some of the common statistics. For the most part, the male, the father figure, is both alcoholic and diabetic. A couple of things that might contribute to those things are the legacy of despair and the futility that comes from living in crisis mode, as well as the dietary component, where the basic food structure is maize, corn facilitating in the manufacturing, the making of tortillas becoming the number one staple food, which, when it breaks down into sugar, promotes itself into a high rate of diabetes because that's the consistency of the diet. So you've got these two things happening in the patriarchal side of Central American Mayan culture. You've got alcoholism and diabetes. Then you have the mother, you have the matriarch, also the same circumstances, but inbred in that culture is the one who takes care of everything, the responsibility, the the one who navigates not only the husband, but also now the Catholicism that has bred many, many children. And so a very dense weight of responsibility becomes. And so many of the children then in this dynamic become critical pieces to survival, to labor, to chores, to corn harvesting, to just keeping things going, to making trinkets so that these trinkets can be sold in markets so that anything that can come in can contribute to the income of that survival. You get the picture. Crisis mode. This has always been going on for multiple generations. Let's say now you go into these environments and you are part of pro education. And part of the work that I've been involved in there since 2017 is being aligned with some exquisite people who have this high skill of vetting young Guatemalan girls who have a immense propensity for wisdom and comprehension and education. And yet, because of the dynamics that I explained, there is no understanding within the mother who makes most of the decisions why it would be necessary for her daughter to get an education. Why? Not because she's cruel, but because her whole level of understanding is crisis mode. Think of the tree. All that she has ever known is to live by the consciousness of the tree, to get by the tree. So when someone comes and starts talking about a long game, so a long game meaning if you will allow us to provide your daughter with education, we need this much time from her. We need this much commitment from her. We will pay for this. We will support her. All that she has to do is show up, come to school. So that's going to cause a conflict in the chores and all the customization of what this female child has been used to before, right? So we're disrupting that. And it's very difficult. And it was very sobering to watch how the mother just would say no. Here we are, part of a part of a group, a collective that is wanting to offer something to break free of this generational poverty and illiteracy. And yet the mother is saying no because she doesn't have a concept of forest nature, or in this case, we would talk about the long game. And so, what is the solution of that? So, before you want to judge or have any feelings whatsoever about the Guatemalan mother, I want you to hear and understand that you and I do the same thing. Something is always showing up and offering us something expansive. But there is so much of us that is deeply rooted to just this survival or crisis mode operation that we either don't hear it or we dismiss it readily. So before you and I think about, wow, isn't that unfortunate that they can't see the obvious? The truth is, we do the same thing. And so what one does then is one goes back and we find professional Guatemalan women. We find business women. We find Guatemalan women in the health profession, like doctors and dentists. They come with us to these Mayan villages. And now the mother is able to see a prototype. They are able to see an example that, oh, there are others within my culture, within my representation, that somehow have broken free from crisis mode. And so, very slowly and very compassionately and with consistency, you begin to give them the possibility and the prototype of something greater than what they're accustomed to. And slowly they become more readily acceptable to the forest nature or the long game. And we are able to provide their daughters with scholarships. Those scholarships translate into education. Those education turns into professional jobs where now these graduates, these young Guatemalan women, are making money and are able to support that family dynamic in a way that would never have been possible. Again, it's the same thing for you. There are prototypes that are being presented. Same thing for me. There are prototypes of possibility that keep showing up. And if there's that within me that matches the affirmation I gave to you early, I am willing to expand. I am willing to see something beyond. Then what that is the inevitable path, the whole purpose for being, for us to move less and less from being sequestered and drowned and veiled in dualism into something far more expansive, non-dual solution, moving further and further into not just trying to expand in this plane of existence as David or you, but to see something even far greater than that. And that to me is yet another example of the fact that everybody goes on the same journey. It may look different, but we're all on a journey from going so deeply veiled and ignorant in this dualism track to non-dualism, to solution, to things that are beyond understanding, to an expansion again, that has no finish line. Do you see how excited I get about this stuff? So if you stayed with me this long, the forest for the tree thing is just one example. So play this over and over if you're so inclined, and practice your own usage of that this week. Like look at it and go, hmm, let's do a little assessment or audit of my beliefs. Are my beliefs more tree or are they more forest? And if everything is so crisis driven, so forest driven, so locked into something like this, what can be done about that? What kind of surrender could be done about that? So we could keep incorporating more and more and more of being a forest person in each of the little microcosmic areas of our lives. I want to tell you that by doing that, the expansion is inevitable. The clarity that comes is inevitable. And it's your birthright. It's your birthright. And don't let the current events play with you on that and thinking that um, you don't have time for that, because you do. And it's the only reason that you and I are here, is to keep leaning into all things expansive. May that be a part of your practice this week, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.